Good Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com podcast, brought to you by our good friends at Blue Water Climate Control. Be sure and check them out online at bluewaterclimatecontrol.com. You can visit them on Twitter at blueh20_climate, or you can give them a call at 865-299-2290 for all of your HVAC needs. They'll can take care of you. You can make an appointment online. You can call them and make an appointment. They'll send a technician out to give you exactly what you need, nothing more, nothing less. It'll be done the right way the first time. They've got financing options available for you. You can get a tune-up, whatever you need for your system. They can take care of you at Blue Water Climate Control. With Austin Price and Rob Lewis, I'm Brent Hubbs. Tough day for Tennessee. Rob, we'll start with you on Monday with news about basketball getting shut down. Football's not going to play on Saturday. Just a stark reminder of how kind of fragile all of this is for A, basketball to get started, and for B, football to get to the finish line.
Yeah, tough blow. I mean, Tennessee fans, we're anxious, to get a look at this basketball team. I think the way the football season has gone has fueled what was already a lot of anticipation. And I know, from talking with people over there, that the players, coaches themselves were beyond excited to start a delayed season after they've, had the weirdest and longest off season in basketball history. And the hope is now just that you get a chance to play next Wednesday in Indianapolis against Gonzaga, which I would say that's definitely up in the air.
First game of the year.
Hold on just a second.
Both teams are going to be rusty. Obviously Tennessee's probably got to work through a little more of a, early season struggles when they're trying to find chemistry with young guys. But they've got enough veteran guys, Rob. Don't you think that they could mask that? I mean, Josiah, Rick, kind of sang his praises and going into year two when he joined us on The Nation on Sunday. And then obviously you've got Vescovi in year two, Fulkerson and Eves. I mean, it's not like everything's just coming in and it's all being placed on Keon and Jaden Springer in that freshman class.
Yeah, but you mentioned the word chemistry, and that's what they're going to be short on. I mean, everybody else is too, but missing your first two games, not getting a chance to see what you really got, not being able to make some adjustments, some corrections before you face what should be a loaded Gonzaga team. It's not ideal, but you're dead right about the veterans. I mean, Santiago and Josiah are only sophomores, but they got all the minutes they could handle last year. It's not like Tennessee's leaning heavy on the freshmen. I mean, I think Keon and Jaden are going to be two of their better players, but it's not like they need them to be the best player on the court every night. But again, just not ideal, and a big bump in the road when Tennessee got hit really hard with it earlier on, but it's been smooth sailing for about the last month or 6 weeks, and they really thought they were out of the woods.
Yeah, and do you think, Rob, that from a basketball standpoint, we'll get to football in a few minutes, but just from a basketball standpoint, the fact that students have gone home, that it was probably unrealistic to think basketball in a big spectrum could get started this week. We're seeing a lot of cancellations in a lot of places, but that does it get easier for basketball in 10 days, 2 weeks, when they've almost been able to bubble themselves a little bit on campus with the elimination of some of the contact tracing and some of that stuff? Or do you think that this is just a real challenge for basketball to even get off the ground in the month of December?
I think it does get easier. I don't think there's any question. I mean, campus is going to be a ghost town. I mean, it's like that for the men's and women's basketball players every year. So I think it gets far, far easier. Now, you still have to worry about off the court, type of stuff, but I'm not saying that Tennessee will mandate things, but I mean, I think they'll be really smart about managing, what their players do socially. And I think it means enough to these kids that they themselves will be careful about things.
Rick Pitino has suggested that this is all a bad idea to be playing in the winter, and that they ought to start this thing in March and play the NCAA tournament in May. We've seen the NBA be flexible, obviously, with their draft and when they've done the draft and how they did the draft this year. How late you think basketball could go? Clearly, basketball doesn't want to go that direction, and they don't want to have a tournament in May. But how how do you think basketball? How long could basketball delay? Because Rick Barnes made it clear they have to have the NCAA tournament. How could they? How far could they delay this thing out? You think realistically?
I always thought starting in January was a feasible and a sound idea. Obviously, they didn't want to do that, and keeping the non-conference. Just you still could, maybe abbreviated the non-conference a little bit and played the tournament and been done before school was out in May. I mean, I think I don't think you could start it like Rick Pitino's talking about in March and play anything other than conference basketball, which I don't think anybody wants to do. And how much different would starting in January make things? I don't know, but I was in favor of a later start than the November 25th, just to get more information, to maybe get over the hump, and have things be a little smoother, which obviously they are not right now.
Of course, Rick Barnes dealing with it at this point. It sounds like he's feeling better and is doing okay.
Monday afternoon, he felt fine. I had a chance to speak with him, and he's certainly taking every precaution, but Monday afternoon, he was not having any issues.
And we'll see when this basketball team can get back to action, when they can get back on the court and go, and when this basketball team is going to be able to get on the court and play against somebody. And we'll see how basketball will present itself in the coming weeks. While you got basketball on hold at this point, you've got football on hold for this weekend, Austin. This doesn't feel like a good open date for Tennessee. And maybe that's because you feel like they could beat Vanderbilt, but this one doesn't feel like it's the greatest scenario for Tennessee to me this weekend, Austin.
Well, no, I mean, ultimately you take another week off. And again, Tennessee was going to inevitably have some guys out this week because they have had a positive test. They do have a few guys out on contact tracing, but they were going to be able to play. So I think, was it a perfect world for Tennessee to play Saturday? No, but at the same time, now you move that Vanderbilt game back, Brent. They're either going to play it the 12th or the 19th, depending on which way the league office goes. It's either going to be sandwiched in between Florida and A&M or after Florida and A&M, where you potentially could be on a 7-game losing streak. I mean, they really needed to play it this weekend ahead of those other two games to try to get some positive momentum, to try to, right the ship a little bit. Now a lot of these questions are going to linger again. They stop, start, stop, start. I mean, and in bad play, this has just been a Twilight Zone nightmarish 6 weeks or so for the Vols.
Oh, absolutely. And here's the other question that Jeremy Pruitt has to answer and decide upon now. And I think it's probably an easy decision, but it's not the decision you necessarily want to take. What do you do with your football team? You going to tell them they got to stay here for Thanksgiving when there's not a game on Saturday? Are you going to let them go home for 4 days, or 3 days, and then come back in and potentially deal with issues, heading into next week as well? I mean, I think just from this standpoint, I don't know that I think the right answer is you got to let your kids go home because there's nothing to keep them here with no game being played this weekend. But from a COVID standpoint, that's probably not the best thing for them to do, right?
No, I think the best thing for them to do would be them to keep them here this weekend. And I know that's kind of a sucky outlook, but I mean, normally on Thanksgiving, they host all the position, Joe Osset would have the tight ends over. Jay Graham would have the running backs over. Jim Chaney would have, whoever over. I think it's wise to keep them in. I mean, you saw Florida State talk about how that they didn't, they kept their guys in on a bye week, and then that was part of their reasoning for justifying not allowing Clemson to bring a potential positive test into the fold around their kids, that they had held, held everybody accountable a certain way and felt like they needed to hold the other teams accountable. I think Tennessee needs to do that. Otherwise, you run the risk of potentially not playing next week. And let's face it, if Tennessee's got a few in contact tracing, and I'm told they do, those kids, unless the contact tracing started way back when, which I don't think it would start after the Auburn game. means they're probably going to miss the Florida game as well.
I just think it's a hard sell to kids, though, Rob, to sit there and say, "Hey, by the way, you can't go to your position coach's houses to have Thanksgiving because you're not supposed to gather. That's against SEC protocols. You can't have team meals, can't have team functions outside of practice. You don't have students on campus. You don't have classes. So we're going to practice on Thanksgiving morning, and then go to your apartment and hang out until Friday when we can have a little walkthrough, and then you get the weekend off and you can't go anywhere either." I think that's a tough sell, particularly for a football team that hasn't won, and you just wonder kind of where their focus is anyway.
Yeah, why am I? We just lost 5 in a row. It's not like we're in the playoff hunt or playing for a big bowl game. But I can't go home and spend Thanksgiving with my family. And I agree, it's a tough look. I mean, I agree with Austin's point also that hey, that's by far the smartest thing to do. But when you're sitting there at 2-5, I mean, what is the sacrifice that you're going to ask those kids to make? Is it worth it?
Yeah, I think that'll be really interesting to see what this athletic department does, what Jeremy Pruitt does, how they manage, how they ask their kids to manage, the extended holiday weekend here with no game. Austin, you're under the belief that had they played this weekend, it was going to be Harrison Bailey's time. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I believe that it was going to be his time. Yes, I just, in talking to a few people, it just felt like that was the direction that they were headed. Not that it was 100% done, but again, if you're either starting one of two people at this point, they're not starting Maurer and they're not starting Shroud.
Well, they didn't even take Maurer to Auburn.
Correct. And then take Shroud to Arkansas. So, I mean, you're either starting 2 or 15. And I just felt like that it was likely to be 15 if Tennessee started or Tennessee played a game this coming Saturday. And now you have 2 weeks to get him prepared for Florida. Yippee!
You think that's more based on the fact that they liked what they saw out of him in the 2 series in the fourth quarter, or is it just the absolute decision that Jared made on the interception?
Well, I think it boils down to preparing for the future, Brent. I mean, they know number 2 ain't gonna be back. I know we all joke about that he'll be back for another year and all that stuff, but he ain't gonna be back. So they better start preparing for the future, or there won't be no future.
And I think probably what they saw from Harrison on those 2 series makes it an easier decision too. I mean, I'm not saying he was Tua or anything, but I thought he looked competent. I thought he looked poised. I thought he had good presence in the pocket. Timing of his passes was good. I mean, and I know Auburn was seeing a different defense than with Auburn up that big that late. But I thought he looked ready.
It's hard
to be given a shot.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that he can't manage the offense based on what this offense looks like at this point in time with where they are and kind of their simplicity with some stuff. And I know there's talking about managing the run game, but I mean, you can manage that at the line of scrimmage with your veteran offensive line, and we'll look at me at the sideline and all that stuff as well. So I don't think that there's any reason to suggest at this point that he would be overwhelmed. Does that mean he's ready? No, he's probably not ready, but when's anybody ever, quote, really ready? I mean, when do you know somebody's – I mean, if you're waiting on perfection, somebody to know everything and be perfect with stuff, nobody's ever going to be ready. So I just think that, it's kind of like a baseball team calling up somebody from AAA, or AA. Maybe he's not ready, but why not? You're out of the race.
Speed up his development.
Yeah, you're out of the race, so go ahead and call him up and see what happens there.
The greatest quarterback that ever played here wasn't ready when he was freshman.
Yeah, it's true. No, he wasn't, and obviously he got better quickly, but he wasn't ready. All right, let's talk a little bit about Auburn upon kind of rewatch and look at it. Offensive line I thought was really good in the run game. I thought they were okay in pass pro. But Eric Gray continues to find his way. And this, they clearly seem to be building this thing around Eric Gray. Upon rewatching and relooking at it, what's your biggest takeaways from Tennessee's loss at Auburn, Rob?
I mean, it's hard not to start with the offensive line. I mean, 222 yards rushing. I mean, that's not a great Auburn deep front seven. I mean, certainly with KJ Brent KJ Britt out injured and, what they lost last year. They're not what they have been in the recent past, but they're solid, and Tennessee manhandled. I mean, they changed the line of scrimmage all night long. I know you noted this, Hummer. I mean, Eric Gray was consistently getting to the second level before he was having to make a move, and he was making people miss. I thought he ran with authority. I mean, he's not a huge back, but he was falling forward. I think getting through arm tackles in a way that we maybe haven't seen him this year. And I mean, had the two longest runs by running back this season in one game. What do you have? 3 over 20? The 133 yarder, they get a 25 yarder, and then a 21. I was very impressed.
What is your taking away from the defense?
Just you got to get off the field on third down. I mean, Auburn's 9 of 15, and some of those were 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1, but then they gave up the huge 3rd and 10 on that drive in I guess it was the third quarter, and Tennessee's been bad at that all year, and they were on Saturday night. And meanwhile, they were great at it on offense. Tennessee was also 9 of 15 on third down, and they've been the worst team in the league by a good margin. And again, I think that was due to the offensive line and the run game. They were seeing 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3 instead of 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9.
It's interesting, Rob, or Austin, when you look at this, Tennessee's defense has given up 50% of third down conversions this year. Check out this number on 3 and outs. Okay, Tennessee's offense has had 22 3 and outs this season. Okay, Tennessee defensively has forced 11 3 and outs.
Whew. That's a great Hubbard stat.
6 of those 11, Austin, came in the first 2 games. They forced 4 3 and outs against South Carolina, 2 against Missouri, and it's been pretty much downhill.
And so they're averaging 1 3 and out per game since then.
Yes, yeah. Georgia had 1, Kentucky had 2, Alabama didn't have 1, Arkansas had 1, Auburn had 1.
And remember, that's a Kentucky offense that's one-dimensional.
It's like basically a single wing.
I mean, that's pretty crazy to think about. That's the fewest. That's got to be one of the fewest number of 3 and outs that we've ever seen a defense at Tennessee have. It seems crazy.
Did you go back through every game book and get that one yourself?
No, I have my statistician assistant hook me up with some of these stats.
I need you to look up how many they had during the South and Siri year.
That's a great one. I don't know.
For comparison.
That's a great one. They didn't have many that year. That's for sure. Here's a couple. I'm gonna throw a couple more Hubbard stats at you, Rob Lewis, because I know you love these. All right. Tight ends were targeted 7 times against Auburn.
Had 6 catches.
They only had 7 targets the entire season leading into the game. So clearly there was a game plan shift. We talk about getting creative or doing something different. They at least try to do something different with the tight end. Now, on 3rd and 3, you can't run a 1-yard route if you're Princeton fan, and have to punt it there. But at least they did some things different there. And here's
Jacob Warren had a big time snag.
Yeah. And here's a trivia question for you. When do you think would be the last, and I don't know the answer to this, I've got to look it up, the last time the Tennessee's leading rusher was also their leading receiver in terms of catches? Eric Gray and Josh Palmer are tied for 22 catches apiece this year.
Oh, I thought you mean for a season. I bet it's never happened.
Of course, Gray had that one series at Arkansas where he looked like David Martin against LSU.
He's been targeted. He's had the ball thrown to him 24 times, targeted 24 times. He's got 22 catches.
He's had 59 touches the last 2 weeks. Is that not right? Combined receptions. Like I posted a thread on the board the other night. Can you imagine what Alvin Kamara could have done if he'd got 59 touches in two weeks?
Oh, he'd have been on
which might still be the coach here.
He'd been somebody's Heisman list probably. The Tennessee's running. I mean, Gray and Chandler combined have 36 targets and 34 catches. Interesting on Palmer with 22 catches. Austin, they can't seem to get him the football.
Well, and then when they do, he drops the ball like he dropped the touchdown. I mean, he got 2 hands on that.
That was going to be a big time catch, but we've seen him make those like at Georgia, at South Carolina. I mean, if you're a number 1 receiver in the SEC, you got to come down with that one.
Yes, you do.
So how do they get him open? Or is it more a matter that they continue to get Jalen Hyatt targets, they continue to get Velus Jones targets, and if they continue to get them the ball, it will open some things up for Josh Palmer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it. We talked about early in the year, like they need somebody to come along and even if it's by committee, kind of complement, JP. And again, would you have told me that he had 22 catches, 7 games in? I'd have probably said I would probably lean more towards like 30. But this is a Tennessee offense that again hasn't thrown it a ton, and so when you start looking for Velus Jones more, when you start looking for these some of these freshmen more, Palmer's targets are going to go down, and teams are trying to take him away, and Tennessee's not throwing it a whole lot, so combination equals with 22.
All right, so let's look at this week. If you're Jeremy Pruitt, we've heard about this in the other open dates. They've gone back to camp style practices and that type of thing. They practiced for Vanderbilt today because the news of the cancellation of this game didn't come down until late. How do you approach Tuesday and Wednesday if you're Jeremy Pruitt with this team? What do you? I mean, how do you go about your business?
Well, I think you got to keep the guys by the. Well, I just think you got to try to get guys to to stay focused, because I mean, like if I was a player on this team and you don't really like practice a whole lot, I mean that's all you've done the last few weeks. I mean, bye week a game, bye week a game, now another bye week, and that's hard. Again, I'm not a range rat on the golf course, so I like to go actually play. If you told me that I had to just hit balls and could only play, every so often, my interest would go down. So like, I think, you better hope the guys that are your leaders on this team keep some of these other guys focused. And you hope that some of these young guys are actually like, I better take advantage of this to have a chance. I got a little bit more playing time. Like if you're those freshman wide receivers, Weidman saw the field more than he ever has Saturday. Holiday, Callaway, same thing. They should have some type of like energy going into this week to continue their progression to get on the field more.
Rob?
I'd take my hat off to Jim Chaney. I mean, all the things that they talked about, I mean, he got done on Saturday. They had explosive plays in the run game and the pass game. He got Velus Jones involved. I mean, he had a little wrinkle for Callaway and for Holiday. And I mean, it's sad to say it again when they scored 17 points, but that was as good as they looked on offense all year long. Except, maybe the Missouri game, but I mean, they were getting things done. Then you have, the interception when you're sitting on the 12-yard line and you miss 2 field goals.
Yeah, and that's been the story of this team all year long. 80 drives, 21 scores. They got 7 interceptions, 5 turnovers on downs, 4 fumbles, 4 missed field goals, in addition to 33 points.
And Samaglia's got to be hurt. I mean, is there any other? I mean, or is it just in his head? I mean, the kid was one of the best kickers in the country a year ago.
And I know it's a minor positive, but so much of talk about like what seniors may come back. I mean, he better be coming back. Like I think if he had a good year, he probably thought he was going pro. But being a kicker in the NFL is extremely hard to be. And so you better take advantage of another year in college since he's got it.
Yeah, there's 32 of those jobs. That's it.
Yeah.
Nobody has a backup kicker.
And there have been plenty of great college kickers that never played in the league. Just couldn't latch on anywhere.
A bunch of them here.
Yeah.
Well, and you got the Titans sitting there with a guy who's missed a ton of field goals, and they still keep him because you would think that's a job that opens up, and it hasn't opened up for that. That's an interesting point. I hadn't really thought about it, Austin, but he probably does need to explore and should explore the looking back. I thought he just overcooked the first 50-yarder against Auburn, tried to, because it was a long kick, and he just overcooked that one. And
they just cut the crap out of the second one.
Yeah, the second one was, I mean, just fundamentally a bad leg swing, it looked like, because it looked like one of my slices off of a tee box somewhere.
And what a big miss. I mean, it was
totally,
right? That was the drive after the pick six.
Yep, you went right back down the field. You missed that field goal. If you make it, then when you score, they're late. You're down 7 instead of 10, and you can kick it away and played normal defense with a full complement of timeouts.
Yeah, would have been 20-13. And I'll tell you another big play was Auburn had third. It was still 20-10. It was after that missed field goal. It's 20-10. Auburn had third and like 6 or 7. They were inside their own 40. I think they were in their 37. And that's when Alante got flagged for the pass interference, which I thought was a 50-50 call. And they get the first down, and they really don't have a hiccup the rest of the way down the field on the way to taking a 27-10 lead.
Yep, and that was a big play in the game, and again another third down opportunity missed that they couldn't get off the field. So we'll see where this team's at. I'll give this team credit; they haven't mailed it in. A lot of people wondered they did not mail it in at all against Auburn. They didn't handle adversity particularly well. I don't think they were the same team after the pick six, but their effort was really good up until that point for sure. And they had not laid down and quit on each other or quit on this coaching staff. So we'll see what they look like in another week against Florida, coming off an open date, which is certainly a very different challenge than what it was going to be this week, taking on Vanderbilt. Quickly, Austin, let's talk a little bit about recruiting. Nyland Green's the guy who's supposed to make a decision this month. This month is quickly going away. There's 6 days left in the month. One, is he still going to make a decision this month? And two, it felt like Tennessee was a pretty good spot 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago. Does it feel that way now?
No, it doesn't. I got one person on campus who still feels somewhat confident, and, another person that, acknowledges, when you look at the totality of the record, that hurts. And I think this is very much something that, Nyland has, I'm going to put a top 5 out soon. I'm going to put a top 5 out soon. He never did. Then like 3 months later, he finally does it. I'm going to do it in November. Well, he also has been quoted as saying that he's going to wait until the playoffs are done. Well, the playoffs don't even start till Friday. So if they win, then you're into December. So I think I think it's just a matter of like him coming to a decision. I think that this right now is currently between Georgia and Clemson.
Think Clemson's crawled back in it, and Tennessee's lack of success.
And if you ask me to pick, I'd pick Georgia.
But you think it's the lack of success at Tennessee that's flipped this thing the last few weeks?
Yeah, again, I think he loves Ansley. I think he likes Pruitt. But when you look at the overall, arc of the program right now, there's no juice.
And if you're that kid's parents, what are you telling him to do? If my son, then he doesn't. Don't get me wrong. He's looking at Clemson, Georgia, and Tennessee. It's a no-brainer.
Well, and I continue to go back to the fact that, right now, the best thing that's going for Tennessee in recruiting is COVID, because you got all those commits early. Those kids can't take visits. This thing would be way more dicey with several of these kids if they could take visits, but they can't. So I think they're a little more locked in than they normally would be. So yeah, again, I think that, winning cures all. The problem is what would have been a good chance to get a win Saturday, even with Vanderbilt playing better, is now postponed. And, these other 2 games are extreme reaches.
Well, and if you play Vanderbilt the last game of the season, signing day's already happened.
Well, and you're 2-7 going into signing day.
Yeah, because signing day starts
3-6 looks a lot better, but still, it's
so that's the interesting thing too. With signing day and games still being played, it's hard to see a whole lot of movement there on any kind of front right now, because there's so much potentially going on with everybody if they can get back to playing, and we'll see if they can get back to playing. And that's the biggest thing right now, Rob.
AP, I know, fans, I think fans overblow it sometimes, but just with the totality of how bad the season has been, the Auburn game, anything to, is that a big deal for Dylan Brooks or Cody Brown?
I don't think so. I'm not going to say that Dylan Brooks didn't end up, not at Tennessee. I'm just saying
it won't be because
I don't think he's going to move away from Tennessee. I'm just saying that it wouldn't surprise me if something happened between now and signing day, but I don't think that's going to happen. Cody Brown, he seems more locked in, just about as locked in as anybody, as far as, kind of his messaging. And I know how much he talks to Jay and stuff. So I don't think that one game weighs any more than any of these other losses.
Speaking of locked in, Tyon Evans is back in the fold. How big of that is a big of a get is that for Tennessee?
Well, I think it's big. I mean, this is a guy that, I was told, this week, is quote 100% better than Cam Akers. That's pretty lofty praise for a kid that
we know somebody who recruited Cam Akers.
Yes, we do. So that's some pretty lofty praise for the kid. They've been high on him the whole time. Super high. They don't care about what anybody has him ranked. I mean, they believe that this kid is that good and that kind of a game changer. He's big and he can run and he can break tackles and is exactly what Tennessee's looking for and would be a great compliment to Eric Gray.
Yeah, I don't know what the competition is like, but I watched his his highlight stuff on Saturday after the news broke. And
you watched his commitment video that I did at midnight then?
I think the kid's a stud, man.
Yeah,
and again, who knows what the competition looks like?
Right.
I mean, his film is great.
Yep, we'll see. What he looks like when he gets here. But that's one Tennessee was shocked when he decommitted, but very pleased when they got him back in the boat on Saturday as well. So we'll keep a track on what's happening in recruiting, and obviously we'll keep up to date on kind of what's next for the athletic department from a COVID standpoint, with basketball being shut down at this point, no football this weekend. We'll follow all of that and kind of see what the next turn is for all things athletics for the Volunteers. But
any word on Tyler Barron's injury before we get out the door?
Got a cramp.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I wasn't sure,
Sources tell me he had a cramp, AP. That's going to do it for the Blue Water
Climate. News and notes today.
This is my news and notes. Blue Water Climate Control, Volquest.com podcast for Austin Price and Rob Lewis. I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, everybody.